You're listening to The Switch. I'm your host, Stephanie Shaw. Hey, welcome to The Switch. I'm Stephanie Shaw. I'm a multi-certified holistic nutrition coach who, after finding no success with the 18 doctors and 2 world-renowned healthcare facilities I visited, decided I needed to make a switch and take my health into my own hands. Now I'm obsessed with you getting hormonally balanced and emotionally aligned. This podcast is about education, empowerment, and simple no-cost strategies you can implement right now. I'm so excited to be here with you to talk about all things health, beauty, clean living, and mindset. Ready to take your mind and body to the next level? It's time to make the switch. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Switch. I am so excited to be here today with Celia Kibler. Celia, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, Stephanie. Glad to be here with you.
Yeah, we had such a great time the last time we talked, so I had to have you on the podcast so you can tell folks about what you do. So for my audience, Celia is the founder of Pumped Up Parenting and co-founder of Funfit Family Fitness. I had to practice that one. Her world is kids and especially toddlers, simply because she absolutely loves this age, don't we all? And she's been working with toddlers and their parents for over 30 years. The changing parenting trends, which we'll talk about, are what led her to become a parenting coach and to write her book, Raising Happy Toddlers. With an extensive career and a life raising toddlers and having spent the last 35 years coaching, teaching, and counseling parents and their kids, most of her clients refer to her as the baby whisperer. I love that title. Tell our audience a little bit about what you do, Miss Baby Whisperer.
Well, so I really think I got the title because I just am great with kids, and kids and I relate. You know, I always say, finding my inner child is never the problem. Looking for my inner grown-up is where I fall flat on my face, So I just relate to kids. I know how they think. I know what they like. I just have this gift of always, being able to connect to a child of any age, especially the little ones, but teenagers, it doesn't matter. I can just connect because they're like my safe spot. They're where I'm natural and I'm comfortable. And, in examining my life, I really realized that my love for children came because there's no judgment there. There's no criticism. And they're my world. I love them. They're awesome.
I love that. I love kids too. I worked in our children's ministry for almost 17 years. People are like, "You've been changing diapers for 7." I'm like, it's so much fun. I see some of the kids now and I'm like, oh my gosh, the boys are bigger than me. I saw one of the girls. I'm like, oh my gosh, I changed her diaper. She's like an adult now. Like, it's so weird. I often say, and I love the little boys, and I have boys. My boys are like, yeah, stop saying that in public, Mom.
I know. That's when I say I love kids, I feel like I have to justify, like I don't actually love, I
Right.
love kids. I love, like, you can't even say it right,
No, I know. It's so, and that's because of the crazy world in which we live.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
We can get to later.
Yes, exactly. So what made you decide to help parents with their journey?
So I co-created Funfit Family Fitness with my sister back in 1987. And it is a fitness company for children from 11 months through elementary school. And we also include parents, which is why it's a family fitness company, because parents take classes with their kids. So for almost 40 years, I have seen parenting trends come and go. And I would say in the last 10 years or so, parents have really struggled. I think a lot of it is there's so much information out there. They don't know which one's right, which one's wrong. Should they do this? Should they do that? They're constantly second guessing themselves. And unfortunately, the ones who suffer from it are our children and the future of our world. Right. I mean, let's face it, we're raising adults, not children. So this is what we do today affects our world tomorrow. Every child matters. And I just used to get, after classes, I would get parents that sit there and ask me all this stuff about kids. My kids are grown. You know, I'm a grandma, and they would constantly ask me stuff. And I'm like, I should do this for a living. You know, I should not just do classes. I should do parent coaching for a living. So I did.
That's awesome. I love that. And so part of most of our stories either are from pain to purpose, or there's something in our childhood that triggers something that makes us want to coach, be, act, react, whatever in that way. Was there a trigger for you?
So what we didn't mention yet, I'll mention it now, is that I'm on a mission to stop 1 million parents from yelling at their kids and start creating childhoods that everyone can blossom from. In my childhood, I was raised by 2 of the most wonderful human beings on the planet. They're no longer on the planet. Now they're in heaven. But my father was raised with a father who physically and mentally abused him. And that cycle continued into our family. He did not physically abuse any of us, but the mental abuse continued. And that included yelling. It included calling my mother names. And he passed away in April at 92. And I'm telling you, not that long, even before he passed away, we were having conversations of how guilty he felt over, you know, things he had done, the way he had treated my mom in certain situations, yelling at us. Like, that guilt doesn't go away. And it's a cycle. Yes, he broke the cycle of physical abuse, but that mental abuse was still there. In addition, growing up from 8th grade to 12th grade, I was diagnosed with scoliosis, and I wore a body brace, a full body brace from my neck to my hips for 5 years of my life. 5 very formative years, you know. So I wasn't asked on dates, you know, I wasn't, I was the handicapped kid. Plus I was in charge of the mammal lab. So I used to walk around with a rat on my shoulder. So needless to say, I was not the catch, but I was always fun and happy, and, you know, I had lots of friends.
That's what counts.
But I learned through that experience to always be grateful and always see the world the glass half full, you know, that aspect of the world, to always know that no matter what you're going through, someone is going through a harder challenge than you could ever think of facing.
Right.
And, you know, because the outpatient clinic where my appointments were right next to the terminal ward, and here are all these kids with cancer, no legs. There was a little girl with a skin disease that was going to be dead in a year. Her skin was just deteriorating, and she would laugh all the time. She was still so happy. But with that combination of my outlook on life that formed during those years, and my father being the man he was, I just knew that kids, all kinds of kids, needed support. They needed to be trusted. They needed to be, you know, needed to gain confidence and know that people believed in them. And my sister and I started Funfit because basically I was always picked last by teams. You can't imagine being the brace rat woman. You can imagine that nobody wanted me on their team. I was not very athletic. If you had told me back then that I was going to have a fitness company, I would like laugh you out of town. But, you know, so we created Funfit, where it was all inclusive. Anyone could be in our classes, regardless of skills, abilities, gender. Everyone was included. It was, for the most part, non-competitive activities. And everyone played all the time. There was no waiting for your turn. There's no, like in baseball, where you're standing out in the field for hours and you actually are doing nothing but counting the bugs. And so all of this just created my desire to always help kids be better human beings. And my tagline on Pumped Up Parenting is, because we're raising adults, not children. So I've raised 5 kids, 2 I gave birth to and 3 I gained through marriage. So I've successfully parented a blended family for 25 years and I have 9 grandchildren. And all that experience has brought me to where I am now. And does that answer the question you asked me?
It does. And
I forgot what the question was.
No. It answers the question. And it brought up a sad memory for me. So my children are 30, 28, and 20. And about 3 years ago, my middle son, he's a graphic designer and he does all kinds of things on the internet. And he found videos of us because there's such an age gap between my middle son and my youngest son. He found videos of me like changing a diaper of my younger son. And I must have just gotten off work and I was super stressed. And the oldest son was recording. So he was recording me changing the diaper. And then the middle son was trying to intervene and I yelled at him. And then the oldest son panned over to my middle son's face and his face was so sad. I didn't remember the moment, but when he showed me that video, and this is like 20 plus years later, I want to cry now.
Thinking about it.
Because I remember the look on, the only thing he wanted to do is help change his little brother's diaper. But I'm like, no, go sit down. And like, it was a reaction to exhaustion, but you're so right that learning to think differently about how you react to situations with your kids, it can leave a huge negative or positive impact. So
Exactly.
it can, I will never forget that video. I get sad every time I think about it. And again, it was 20 years later when I saw it to even realize that.
Doesn't matter. So like dad, he never forgets those things.
Yeah.
You don't forget them. They're so impactful to you and so impactful to your children.
Yes.
You know, when a child is yelled at, what happens is, number one, they never feel like they're good enough.
Mm-hmm.
They never feel like anything they do is, you know, good enough for their parents.
Yeah.
They always feel like they're doubting themselves, second guessing themselves. They have really low self-esteem, low self-confidence. They don't feel like they're worthy of anything, worthy of love, worthy of success. Name all the worthies. They don't feel like they are. And in fact, they don't grow up hating their parents. They grow up hating themselves.
Yeah.
And that alone, you know, if that alone means anything to you, not you specifically, you as our listeners, you need to become proactive and find ways to stop yelling.
Yeah.
And it is so destructive to your children. And, you know, I understand parenting's hard.
It is.
It's hard. And I, by no means, I'm trying to say it's easy. There's nothing about it easy, but you need to learn, you need to grow, you need to stop the cycle. You need to say, this cycle ends with me.
Yeah.
You know, just like, because usually people that yell at their kids have been yelled at as kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, many parents I talk to, I'll say, why do you yell? And they'll be like, I don't know any other way.
Yeah.
And if that's you, then learn a new way. You know, I wrote an article for the Elephant Journal, how to stop yelling at your kids once and for all. I published it on January 8th. This is a month later. In a month, it's been read 150,000 times, shared like 40,000 times.
Wow.
People want to stop yelling at their kids.
Wow.
And I run a challenge on Facebook so you can stop. And there are ways, you know, people don't believe me, but I'm like, yes, you know, you don't have to keep asking 5 times until you yell.
Yeah.
They will listen without you yelling.
Yeah.
So it's time to become like, really get everybody becoming proactive in this instead of reactive.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens.
Yeah, I have to intervene and cover myself and say that I have very healthy, well-balanced men who are quite successful. So, you know, I'm sure I yell more than that one time, but you're right, that consistent yelling that anyone knows, it feels as if you're being demeaned. So you do take that burden upon yourself. tell me a little bit about the challenge and then tell parents, I'm going to be a grandparent in like 2.5 weeks.
Yay! So excited. Is that your first? That's your first, right?
First one. I'm so
You're
excited.
gonna love being a grandma.
I know. I'm so excited. Like, I'll be in the grocery store and I'll find a way. Oh, baby lettuce. I'm gonna have a baby soon.
It's such a blessing.
It
Such
is.
a
It
blessing.
is. So tell me as a new grandma, and points that hopefully my daughter-in-law, my son will be able to listen to. Tell us as a community, what are some things that we can watch for and steps and actions that we can take that so that we aren't yelling at our children?
So first of all, you need to create an environment in your home that is a calm environment, not a chaotic environment. So, schedules and routines are key with new babies, routines, everything with older babies. Heck, for adults, routine is everything. So stick to routines and schedules, put that baby on a schedule, work with them. As far as a grandma goes, I'm a parenting coach. I have 9 grandchildren. I have 5 children.
Mm-hmm.
They know I'm a parenting coach. I do not give any advice
Yes.
unless they ask me. And they all have my book, Raising Happy Toddlers.
Repeat that for grandparents.
I do not offer any advice unless they ask me. None. And I'm a parenting coach and I wrote a book.
Yeah.
They know I wrote a book. They know I'm a parenting coach. If they need help, they will ask me. I do not cross the line in parenting those children unless they're under my care. Right. Then when they're under my care, I just told you earlier, I'm here at my daughter's house because every Wednesday I watch my grandchildren. And when they're under my care, then, that's when I'm in charge of them and their behavior and helping them to, go forth in the world as better human beings. And, but as far as my children go, there's only one time I ever offered advice without being asked, but I asked my daughter before I offered it if I could give her a little advice on a situation. Yeah. And she said yes. I would never have blurted out anything. This is not your child. This is their child.
I think that's
and if you chime in, you're going to not only get in between whatever it is they're trying to achieve, you're going to get in between them.
Right.
And you're going to harm their relationship, the parents.
Yeah. And then that child also starts to look like, ooh, if they're here, what's going on? Like, ooh, I can play this parent over that parent, and I can play the grandparent against. That's such smart advice. Yeah. So creating a calm environment, sticking to routine, keeping your nose out of their business if you're a grandparent. Yeah. What are some other tips that you can give us?
So one direct tip you can start doing right now is start noticing the positive your kids do. Mm-hmm. Very often kids behave wonderfully and you'll be busy working at home or doing whatever it is you're doing, preparing dinner, who knows, whatever in a day that we do 9 million things of. And your children have been wonderful for 2 hours and you've been getting all this stuff done. And all of a sudden they start fighting or something starts happening. And instantly you're in there yelling at them. Whereas for 2 hours, they've been wonderful and you haven't said a peep to them.
I like that.
So all the attention you're giving them is the attention on their negative behavior. Start noticing their positive behavior and start letting them know you noticed. Don't just notice it, tell them you noticed it.
Right.
Because kids ultimately want to please their parents. I know it doesn't seem like that sometimes. I understand. I get it. Yeah. I've raised 5 children. But they really ultimately want to please you. And if they're getting positive feedback on the behavior you want them to have, that's the behavior they will choose to do over the negative. The negative, it's like, I haven't heard from mom in a while. Let's get her attention.
Yeah.
Because attention is attention, good or bad. Doesn't matter. For a kid, attention is attention.
Right.
So start noticing that good and start feeding into that, and you'll see a lot more of it.
I like that. I like that a lot. I've been watching Super Nanny. It comes on Dabble, and these are like,
Bless her heart. She's wonderful, isn't she?
I know. I'm like, these are like Super Nanny comments, and what I hear you saying and things that I've heard on this show as well. It's not the kid. In a lot of situations, it's not the kids. It's how we interact with those kids that make them like more hyper or make them react negatively towards our comments and so forth. So I like that.
Exactly. I'll give you a good example of that.
Uh-huh.
When you ask parents, why do they yell at their kids,
Mhm.
others than parents that don't know any differently, 90% of them will say, well, because I start out really nice and I'm really sweet and I'm calm and I use my manners and I ask them to do something and they don't do it. And then I ask them again, they don't do it. And I ask them again, they don't do that. And then I come in and I'm shouting at them and then they do it.
Yeah.
So clearly they don't listen unless I yell.
Mm-hmm.
Well, parents, what I want to tell you is congratulations, you've trained them to do that. The problem is not that you're yelling. The problem is that you're asking them 4 or 5 times to do something that they should have done after you asked the first time.
Right.
So like an example is a video game. Kids are on video games all the time, and you ask them to get off, they never do.
Yeah.
So if you ask them to get off and they don't get off and they know you're not mad yet or yelling, they're like, okay, I got 5 more minutes on this game before mom comes up and I'm good. And then you don't get to do it again. They figured out that they've got a good 20 more minutes of gameplay until you come up and yell at them. And then you're serious and then they do it.
Right.
So who's in the wrong here?
Yeah.
Who's smarter? Who's got your number?
So what's a tip for that first time getting that reaction that you want?
So when you have a repetitive issue in your home showing up,
mm-hmm.
that's always seems to be a problem. Like the kids won't get off their tablet or they won't, get off a video game or they won't brush their teeth or they, something simple as they fight over a red truck.
Right.
You should proactively set up a consequence if they don't listen.
Yeah.
This should be a consequence that you stay consistent with every time that problem shows up.
Yeah.
And then you ask them to do it. And you can even say, you know what, guys, this whole me asking you 4 or 5 times, that's going to end. I'm going to ask you once. If you don't listen, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Now, you have to be a person of integrity and follow through with what you just told them is going to happen.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then again, they know it's all false stuff and they're not listening to you. So, and then if it happens and they don't listen, one time you're calm, you're peaceful, consequence.
Yeah.
And if you're consistent with that, you will change their behavior and they will start listening.
Yeah, I like that consistency. That's something that works for adults as well. So.
Exactly. Yeah, isn't it funny how all these things work for kids and grown-ups?
Imagine that. So you say that changing parenting trends is why you wrote the book, Raising Happy Toddlers. What trends are you seeing, and are you happy with those trends? What does it look like now versus the way parents are raising their kids, which would be your grandkids, versus the time when you were raising children?
So one thing about my book is it's a manual. Now, people always say no kids come with a manual. Well, now they do. I wrote it. So there went in, when I was raising kids,
mm-hmm.
It was in an era, if you ask my kids, it was when dinosaurs roamed the earth, which clearly it wasn't. But we had no can you imagine? We had no cell phone.
Yeah, I know, right?
Actually, I had a cell phone. I had like the first cell phone in a bag.
Oh, I had one of those too.
Yeah, awesome cell phones. I wish I bought stock at the time, but I didn't. I just bought the phone. But there were no cell phones. Kids did not have cell phones. You had to know where they were going, where they would be, a phone number they could be reached at, who they were with. I needed to know whose parents, had I met those parents, that kind of stuff doesn't end, guys, but people went through raising their kids and now they have cell phones.
Yeah.
So they don't feel like they have to know where they are. Well, you could be 3 states away and receive a call on a cell phone. Let's face it. I mean, they don't have to be around the corner.
Yeah.
They could be on the bus heading to, California if you live on the East Coast. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you have to, I feel like this whole confusion of, am I the friend or am I the parent?
Mm-hmm.
Like that caused a huge problem in parenting because there are all these parents that want their kids to be happy 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to life when life does not always go your way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think your children need to be happy 100% of the time, they are going to be very sad, depressed adults, because we all know things don't go our way all the time, and you're setting them up for disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that entitlement comes from. And like, why shouldn't I get my way? And why shouldn't this happen? So you have to really show your child real life. Don't put them in this like fantasy world. Always have fun. Absolutely. I'm like the fun queen.
Mm-hmm.
Laugh a lot with your kids. Be sarcastic. Be crazy if you're good at sarcasm. Some people are great at it. Personally, we're like great in our family. And our young grandchildren, amazingly, are sarcastic too. I don't know where they get that. But you also need to have boundaries and limits. Boundaries and limits show children you care. Yeah. If you have a child who is raised in a home with no limits and you ask them, well, why are you out till 9:00 at night? And they will say, because nobody cares. And they will mean nobody cares. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because nobody does.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference.
Yeah. I'm thinking about parents who are already at that stage. So I don't have a child. I have a 12-year-old who has a cell phone and they have no curfew. Like, how do I change those dynamics? What are some tools to help me start setting a new tone in the environment in which we live?
So one of the best things you can do, and I will tell you guys in my book, if you read some of the comments on Amazon, what are they called? Reviews. Mm-hmm. Reviews. Is that what they're called? Reviews?
Yes. You got it.
Yeah. A lot of them have teenagers. The majority of my book applies to any family. Potty training, hopefully your kids are potty trained by the time they're teenagers. If they're not, there's a potty training chapter. But talking back, family meetings, there's a whole chapter on a family meeting, and family meetings are golden.
Yeah.
Golden.
Yeah.
Like, you should be sitting down with your kids. And if you want to change things, say, you know what, guys, I got to tell you, I'm not so happy with what I've been as a parent. I feel like I can be better. Mm-hmm. And I want to be better for you guys. And I can stop yelling and I can tell them how you feel. Be authentic. Right. Why are you doing this? So that they don't think, oh, you're God. You're not God. There's only one God and it in you. Yeah. So, let's be real with our kids. Mm-hmm. Let's recognize that, we're human. We make mistakes. Our children are human and they make mistakes. Right. And sit down and say, okay, so I know we haven't had curfews and, but honestly, I just feel like I would like you all home at a certain time so that we can all, have some family time together before we go to bed, whatever it is. I mean, you don't have to say, I want you home now because I feel like I've ruined your life, letting you stay out forever.
I read the book.
Right. But it is for your security and their security and your safety and their safety that you be home. And you can certainly say that. I worry about you. If you don't come home and it's 11:00 at night, I am worried about where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. I was thinking about that and thinking about when the family dynamics are a little different. So a lot of my clients are divorced women. So there may be one tone being set at one house and another tone being set at another house. And just like we said in that scenario where the kids know how to play the grandparents perhaps against the parents, they also know, even if you're in the same house, how to play the parents against one another. What are some
Absolutely.
suggestions for a child that, is spending 5 days here and then 5 days there?
So my children, my two children, when I divorced my first husband, my second husband, I still live with him. I'm not divorced.
Yeah.
But my husband lived in Missouri and I lived in Maryland. So
Mm,
3 times a year, I had to put a 5-year-old and an 11-year-old on an airplane by themselves to go to Missouri,
wow.
all by themselves, many moons ago.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that was hard, that was hard. I sat there and watched that airplane take off. I surrounded it in white light. I prayed. I did everything. I sent, vibes to the pilot. I did everything that I could think of watching that airplane take off
Mhm.
with my two children inside. And what you have to realize is the the seeds that you plant in your child, what you need them to know for life, you plant as soon as you can, because you honestly, I hate to say it, guys, have no control over what happens in that other home.
Yeah.
You're not there. You're not married to that person anymore. They can say, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then you have no idea what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what you have to build is strong, confident kids that know the difference between right and wrong, that are aware of strange feelings in their belly when they feel like something's just not right with the situation.
Yeah.
And I had to teach my 5-year-old this too. So it's never too young to teach them.
Right.
Yes, he had his older sister,
Right.
but he had to know that if they went to dad's house and something wasn't quite right, they spoke up about that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what you have to teach them. And the things that you plant in them now, the responsibility, the responsibility of a clean house is everyone's responsibility. When I go over to the other house, I'll clean up too, even if they don't even want me to,
Right.
because that's the right thing to do.
Right.
You have to prepare your children to be what you want them to be, so that no matter whose house they're in, no matter where they go, they are respectful kids. They are honest. They speak. They're well-mannered.
Mm.
They're kind. They're gentle. There's not all this aggression.
Yeah.
And you have to be a role model for all that. You
Yeah.
cannot be bad-mouthing the other guy because you have all this hard feelings and your ego's hurt
Mhm.
in front of your kids. Don't do it. They will resent you for life doing it. It's
I've
going
heard,
to go back to bite you in the behind.
yeah, I know a divorced family, and the mom has said, and the child is an adult now. The child has children, but that was part of her story. Like, until her child was getting ready to get married, they didn't really know what happened in that marriage. They didn't know. They knew enough to know that mom and dad aren't going to live together anymore. But until, like, I think it was a couple days before that person got married, did they tell them the full story, because they didn't want them to carry that baggage. That was their relationship. The focus now
Exactly.
was on raising that child to make sure that that child was a healthy adult. And I so that was beautiful, beautiful advice.
Amen to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. It's not their business.
right.
It's not their problem.
Yes.
It's
And that's
your
what it becomes.
problem.
Yeah, that becomes a burden on that child. And
Absolutely. And
yeah,
it affects them in a lot of
yes,
ways,
yes, yes.
you know?
Yeah. I always think about when I talk to people about health care and how they're taking care of their bodies, I always think about, this is generational. Like, what you're eating, what you're doing now, that this is going to impact generations. So what you're telling us right now, this is we just gave examples. This is generational as well. Yelling, sharing your own adult burdens with your children, not putting in different parameters. And I know it may sound, to some people it may be like preachy or what have you, but I honestly think that if you tried it, you recognize that it's love. That's showing love. That's showing
Right.
love. Yeah,
It
the
is.
boundaries are love. Boundaries
They
are
are
love.
love.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. They show you care.
yeah,
You care enough that we all have boundaries
yeah,
in life as adults. We can't go steal cars. We can't go rob banks. We can't go punch someone in the face because we're angry.
Right.
We all have boundaries.
Yeah. And teaching them that early helps them not be set up for something bad to happen later. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I have two more questions for you. One,
Okay, go for
can
it.
you leave my audience with some good tips, a good tip that they can take away?
Absolutely. So remember to recognize the positive, which I already told you. But the other tip for you is practice smiling when you talk. And the reason I say to practice smiling when you talk, because this is a gift you can give your kids that will last them a lifetime. Because when you smile when you talk, they'll learn to smile. And if you don't know how to smile when you talk, you just get in front of a mirror and start practicing.
Yeah.
Because you can always hear a smile. Or if you are listening to this audio and you have listened to this podcast, you can hear Stephanie's smile. You can hear my smile. I'm sure if you're a podcast listener, you've listened to podcasts where people talk like this. And nobody wants to listen to those podcasts because, yuck.
Right.
And you've talked to customer service people that sound like they're having the worst day in their life. And it's misery talking to you. And you've talked to other customer service people that are excited and happy and you can't see them, but they're smiling. So smile when you talk and teach your children to smile when you talk and let them use their manners because they see you using their manners.
That's beautiful. And the last question is your switch. So what internal or external thing switch that you make that made you the woman that you are now?
Well, I will tell you, it took a long time. I'm about to celebrate my birthday tomorrow. Of course, you guys are hearing this. You're hearing this down the road. So I will have already passed my birthday and I will be 63 years old. Wow. And I will tell you, it took a long time. And this results from childhood for me to really gain my confidence, really believe that what I'm teaching people is valuable and that it can work for others. I use a lot of these methods with my children and parenting our blended family, but would they work for others? And it was really, I did my first challenge, and this was a couple years ago, and I had so much success from people. Like in the first day, they had stopped yelling and they'd done that. And it really, I was like, well, because I'm always second guessing myself, I didn't believe in myself. And it took that challenge to really go, you know what, this stuff that I have learned, this stuff that I have mastered, this I've become a child behavior expert in 40 years because I've been with so many. Right. This information is helpful to other people. And if I can change one life, in that challenge, there were only 10 people. I now tend to have 1,500 people in my challenge. But in that challenge, there were only 10 people, and every single person had a result where they weren't yelling. Their home was happier. I remember one of the kids said to their mom, and she had teenagers, said, "Mom, you sound so happy. Oh. It's so good to hear you laugh again. I love you." That was her child's comment.
That is beautiful.
I was like, this is it. This is what I need to do. Yeah. I need to turn this around for the parents and for the kids, and it works. And with every parent I turn around, my confidence grows more and more. I no longer second doubt myself, and you just have to decide. I just encourage you to just do it. Just take that tiny step, because every tiny step builds more and more confidence.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. This is such a wonderful conversation. Tell folks, I'll put it in the notes below, but tell folks how they can get in contact with you and where they can get a copy of your book.
Well, if you'd like to have a question, and oh yes, okay. So books too. If you want to have a conversation with me and you want to talk about what's going on with you, go to talkwithcelia.com and we pick a time, we'll chat. It doesn't cost anything. We'll talk on the phone for an hour. If you're looking for my books, go to celiasbooks.com. If you're looking for anything about Pumped Up Parenting, go to pumpedupparenting.com and the Pumped Up Parenting podcast, which you can find the beautiful and lovely Stephanie Shaw on, because we also had another wonderful conversation when she was guest on my podcast. So now that we're BFFs,
We are.
So, but those are probably the best ways to reach out to me, and find me on Facebook and join the Facebook group, Pumped Up Parenting. We'd love to have you. And the challenge, the Peaceful Parenting Challenge, I actually am starting another one. I believe it's Friday, the 19th of February.
Okay.
So I think it's a week from tomorrow is a new one. And I believe that you go to, and I could be wrong on this, stopyellingchallenge.com.
Okay. So
stopyellingchallenge.com.
And
so
this will air after that. So if there
was I forgot.
Facebook or thing, then
forgot, guys.
Find it. Yes.
But you can still reach out to me, and I'll let you know. I run pretty regular challenges because I'm on a mission to stop 1 million parents from yelling at their kids.
Yes.
So I have 1 million parents, and then I'm going to up it to 10 million. So we need everybody on this page, because can you imagine the future of this world?
I know.
Stop yelling at their kids.
I know. That's so exciting. So exciting. Again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate listening to what you had to say. And parents, make sure you get in contact with Celia. Again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure, Stephanie.
I am so excited for you because you just finished another episode of The Switch, which means you are the fierce person I already knew you were. If you're ready to join an exclusive group of other fierce high performers like you, a group where you can bounce ideas off one another and ask questions, be sure to join our exclusive Facebook community. You can find the link below.